Well, good evening, my friends. Yes, we are stitching after midnight. It is now 1:30, closer to 1:40 in the morning, and Karen is still wide awake. So I thought, what better time to record a stitch with me? And what better time, because I was asked to do a little bit further explaining on parking and confetti. So I thought, okay, I'm going to pull out this project, which happens to be the sewing woman that everybody is doing, because it happens to have a fair amount of confetti, at least in this section where I am right now. So I thought, okay, this is a good time to do this. So that is what we're going to do tonight after dark. Oh, me, oh my, what can I say? Like I say, you never know what to expect when you stop by here. I'm going to make this there we go, just a little bit bigger. Yeah, okay. So I am going to show this chart rather freely because I did not partake of the challenge, I guess it was, that many people got the free chart from Heaven and Earth Designs on this sewing woman. However, I really tossed this around before I started doing this or stitching this. I bought the Golden Kite one, and I would have had to stitch it on 18 count, which I was okay with. Well, I was sort of okay with that. But what I wasn't okay with was having to stitch with 2 strands of floss. Because, well, we all know that I cringe when I have to do 2 skeins of floss. It gives me the willies. I don't like to do that anymore. I've become so accustomed with 1 strand of floss that really is what I want to stitch with these days. So I toyed with that and started and stopped and started and stopped, and well, you know the routine of how it takes me a little bit to get to what I want to do with the project. And I finally decided I was going to find the picture on the internet, and I am going to put it through my software, which is WinStitch or MacStitch, whichever you have, whether you have a PC or a Windows, I'm sorry, an Apple, it's MacStitch, a PC, it's WinStitch. So I stuck it into WinStitch. I told it how big I wanted it to be. I told it how many colors I was willing to put up with. And to be perfectly honest, the chart that I got by doing that, looks every bit as good as the chart put out by Heaven and Earth and by Golden Kite. Is it going to stitch up perfectly? Well, that remains to be seen, but it really did interest me to find out, okay, if I put it through the steps to make a chart, I really am curious of how well that chart is going to turn out stitched. So that is primarily the reason that I am stitching the chart that I made and why it's going to be up on the screen, and I don't have a problem with it being up on the screen, because if you can stitch it out of that little bit, well, you go for it. But I thought, well, it's after dark and now 1:45 in the morning, and don't worry about that being the time of day, because I am often awake yet at 3:30. So this is not a big deal. I don't know what it is with me here of late that I am turning into a person that rather be up all night. I doze off during the day. I spill coffee on myself. We've talked about that before. So yeah, it's quite interesting. So I don't think I put it that you can see my cursor, but we're going to start with this T. Oops, I better do that. And I kind of decided that because I am stitching it on 28 count over 1 full cross. So I decided, another big decision I had to make, that I was going to go back to my love-hate affair with parking, because on 28 count it just makes it easier. The primary reason is it just makes it easier to stitch. I mean, over here I had to leave some stitches because I did not have that color at that time. And then to go back and have to find those can be really a challenge. So stitching this way on the 28 count really was ideally the best thing to do. And I don't know why this camera blurred up like that when I yeah, I don't know why it started doing that, but I think we can live with it. So I just did the T, and now let's mark it off. The next occurrence is here, down here. So I am going to bring it down to here and park it. Okay, so here's my line. That stitch is a G. That stitch is a G, and right underneath it is that T. I think this here is where I ended a thread. So this is where okay, do I have some things parked a little wrong here? Okay. Here's my line. So that's, okay, that's the P. So this this is going to be the T. 2, 3, 1, 2, yeah. I think I have this P parked in the wrong spot. So let me fix that right now while I see it. And you know what? It happens. You sometimes park wrong and you end up doing just exactly what I just did of let's look and straighten it out as soon as we see it so that it doesn't confuse us later. So we will mark this one stitched, and then we will go here to the S. Okay, this gets a little easier. So I'm going to, I do not let my needles on. I use one needle and I just keep rethreading because for me, those needles just get way too tangled. So here we're going to stitch an S. Okay. And I'm sorry this camera keeps blurring. I'm not exactly sure what that's about today, but it's a little of an odd hour for me to try and figure that out. So we're just going to have to go with it. And now the next occurrence, because I'm going to, as much as I can, I will try and zigzag. However, there are times that I will just park it in the closest occurrence of that stitch. Now, I have two options here. Two options. I can park it here and go back and finish the E. Okay, because the last stitch on that row on the diagonal is already stitched. I could do that. Or because the stitch is above it, okay, this is already stitched, and then there's another S right here next to it, that's already stitched. I can stitch those while I have the thread in my needle, because I'm not closing off anything else that's going to be stitched around it. So we're going to do that. We're just going to stitch these two. While we're here and have the thread in the needle. I should have put my scientific glasses on, but it seems to be going okay at this given moment, so we'll see. Okay, so there are those two stitches done. And the next occurrence in this diagonal, now you see there are occurrences outside of this diagonal, but the next occurrence within this diagonal is down here underneath the T that we just parked. So I'm going to kind of push these out of the way. And there's the T that we parked. Let's do this a little bit, okay? Okay. There's the P and the T. Here's an H that's parked down a little bit further. So we want to put this S right here underneath the T. And here, the stitch we're skipping would be another T, but then the next one to that is an S. So we are going to park it right here. The other thing, you can double check it by going, okay, here's my gray line. I want to be 4 threads down from my gray line. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that puts us in the right spot. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we are on the right line at the right place. So there are ways to double check that you are parking in the correct place. You can go off of threads that you already have parked, and you can go off of by counting the threads in your square. Okay, so now we're going to mark this is stitched and this as parked. Now I have to get a color, and I think this one, because there's nowhere else for me to park it in this diagonal. Okay, I'm not going to at this moment in time thread a needle, do one stitch to park it in the next diagonal, because I like to keep my working threads all in the same diagonal. I don't like having extra things parked over here because that just adds to my anxiety about parking. So I'm not going to do that, okay? I'm going to let that for the next diagonal, and I will pick that up then, especially because it's right here at the end of a, oh no, wait, I lie. I already have a thread parked there. I'm talking about the E's. Oh, good Lord, people. See, that's because it is now 5 minutes to 2. We'll get a little confused. So yes, there is an E in this space here. So I will have to get that color, and I will stitch that, because if you look down further in that column, let's do it this way, there are 2 more. Okay, so an E is 3787. There we go. So you have to find that number. I do like this new system, and I did get a bigger box to put everything in, and that is working much better. In fact, it came as a set of 2 boxes, 2 filing boxes, and it is on a set of wheels, canisters, and I'm just tickled pink because the box that I have on the bottom holds all my excess floss, and then the box that I have setting on the top is all my current master set. Perfect. It's absolutely perfect. So far, I am really liking it. So now we're going to stitch this E. And now we only had that one little stitch. So now I'm going to go down 1, 2, 3, 4 rows. So we'll count down 1, 2, 3, 4. And here is our other gray line. And we are out. The gray line is stitch number 1. And the next thread is stitch number 2. And that should be perfect, because that's the E. Here's an empty thread that will get another stitch in it, and here is the S we parked before. Okay, so there's the S. Here's an empty stitch that will become another S, and then here is the E for this thread. Consistency in where you park is key to this method. If you are going, I always park in the lower left hand corner. Do wherever you decide that is going to be your spot to park in, do not vary that. Always, always, always. No matter which direction, whether you're going to go down your diagonal, come up your diagonal, go down your diagonal, whether you're going to go down a column, up a column, down a column, whether you're always going to start at the top and work down, it does not matter. Always, always, always park in the same place. Because if you don't, I guarantee you, you will get confused. It's just like if you start a project, and this project, the gray line is thread number 1. The last thread in the gray line is thread number 1. This thread right before the gray line is thread number 10. Gray line is thread number 1. Thread number 10. If in your next project you say, oh, this is now thread number 1, and the gray line is going to be thread number 10, don't you dare do it. Don't you even think about it, because it is going to mess with your head terribly. You will not know when you pick up that project which is which. Guaranteed. How do I know that? Been there, done it. Okay, I failed to mark these 2 S's off when I did those, so we're going to mark those real quick. And then we're going to go back here and we're going to highlight the A's. Now, we will see there's already a thread parked in the A. Now, we have several choices here. You can, if you so desire, you can stitch this one. And because there's one right next to it, we can go ahead and stitch that one. Now, you could, if you so desire, skip these 2, park this here, stitch those 2, then stitch the A. You could do that. However, I find I would prefer, if there's however many of that symbol there are in that row, I am going to stitch them all. Now, what I think about when I do that is, the first question I asked myself, okay, I picked up the A and I have I'm going to thread my needle with that. Is that the one that has the most stitches on that line? If it is, I will save it for last. If it's not, I'll stitch it in whatever order it falls. if that A, for example, is stitch number 9 and 10, but then the next one is over here at the first one, the first stitch, I will stitch it first because there's going to be a travel of 4 stitches. I would rather be able to stitch over that travel than have that traveling be on the top. So that's another question to ask yourself. How many stitches are in between? I mean, here there's only 2 in between, so that's about average anyway, so I don't get too out of the way with that. Okay, but if there were 4, 5, 6 stitches in between, I'm going to stitch that one first because then the other colors will hide that traveling thread. So we did this and this, and I parked it here. Okay, so now I will do the B's, and it just so happens that that thread is parked up at this end because I will park at the closest occurrence. I don't necessarily park in any significant order. I will go to wherever the occurrence is closest. That way it helps minimize your thread usage. Now, these are the only 3 B's in this column. So we're going to stitch these. Like I said, I should have put my glasses on, but I'm not going to hang out here too much longer. Probably another 15-20 minutes maybe. And I don't always stitch two-handed, and because I will tell you, I can stitch two-handed. I don't find it a whole lot faster for me. So I will just do as you are seeing right now. Okay, so the next occurrence of the B is not till the next diagonal. So I am going to end this thread. Now, I don't like to flip. And on this 28 count, I find it a bit difficult to do a pin stitch. So I am going to do this where I'm just going to run a tail. And actually, rather than put them all over here, I am going to just drop down a few rows. Go up, come up, go down at a diagonal. So I know that that is a thread that can be clipped. And then come up here and cut a very short tail. Okay, so however you want to do that is up to you. Normally, if I'm working on my 20 count, I would do a pin stitch. Or I would work under the stitches on the top. But on 28 count, that is a bit of a challenge. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to just work under or work over on these few rows and then just cut it off. Okay. I'm going to do the same thing with this stitch. I could It isn't that many stitches. And we all know that sometimes when you have just that beautifully wonderful straight line on the diagonal, that sometimes you do get lines. So in I'm going to let this for the next time. And it's just one thread, and I'm just going to put it over here out of the way. I'm not going to stitch that because I can catch more stitches if I let it go till the next time. And that's a judgment call as you get to each and every one of those threads. So we're going to highlight the G. Okay. So I only have one stitch, and then I can drop it down to the next line. I kind of wish Pattern Keeper would have a ruler in it like Markup does, but it doesn't. So it's okay. So we're going to do, all right, my glasses are right here. I really do need to put them upon my face. Probably because my eyes are getting tired and I need to be able to see a little better. Aha. There we go. Okay. And now there's a parked one, and now the next one will be here. And then we're going to skip 2. Okay, so we're going to skip 1, 2. Then we're going to do 2 stitches. 1, 2. And we're going to skip 2 again. And then we're going to do 1. And now you're going to go, oh, wait a minute. That's 1 stitch too many because we're coming out even with the row above and we're working on a diagonal, so it should be in 1. Well, then you got to stop and remember, but we did not do the last stitch in that row. So we are perfectly fine with what we're doing. So now the next occurrence is 1 row down, and it's over here. So we're going to park here, and it's going to be 4 stitches. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 3 threads, and this is the 4th thread. We're going to park in the lower left-hand corner, so that takes care of that one. So we can mark those off, park it here, and say okay. Now we have the A, and hopefully I can squeeze. Then I'm going to have to end this thread because see, it's getting a little short. Getting a little short. I really am curious to see how this chart is going to come out, given that it's one I put through the wind stitch program. So is this making more sense to those of you that have asked me the question? I hope so. I mean, it's, in one sense of the word, it does slow you down. It is not as fast to stitch this way as it is, at least for me, it's not, as when you go cross country. So that is a downside to it all. And it's a lot of threading and rethreading of your needle. That's another downside of it all. Sometimes, and that's where my love-hate comes in, the hanging threads sometimes just drive me wild. And other times, they don't bother me so much. So, I mean, there are cons to stitching this way. And it's not for everybody. If you really don't want to be threading and unthreading your needle, or you don't want to have, like, how many threads do we have parked here? Let's look. One. It's a little hard to see them all. Ooh, could be. 2, 3, 4, 5, 8. So there's 8 threads hanging here. You know, if that is something that's going to make you crazy, then this method also is not for you. It's not for everybody. And there are different methods of stitching on the diagonal. Like I said, there's lots of ways to stitch. You just got to try them until you find the one that works for you, or the one that your chart dictates that you stitch. So I'm going to end this thread because I'm going to start a new one on the next row. So I'm going to do just like I did before. I'm going to come down a ways. I'm going to make a little slant, and then I'm going to bring it up and clip it short, and that way I know that's one to be clipped off when I get down that far. And when I get close to it, I will snip it off. Okay. The good thing about this is, A, your stitches look much neater. B, when I come back to this, I will always know exactly where I am at. I can look at the chart and say, oh, yeah, 1 row above the gray line. Yep, that's exactly where I am. My threads are all there. Yes, pick it up and you're off. You don't have to stop and figure out where you're at or what you're going to stitch next. It takes away the having to think a lot about, oh, okay, I did this color. Now, oh, yeah, what do I want to do next? Oh, well, let's see. This symbol Doesn't have a lot of stitches, so maybe I'll do that. But oh wait, this color has a whole lot of stitches, so maybe I'll do that, because then I can use that as landmarks to fill in the other stitches. But then you end up with a situation like this, where you have just a few, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches there to be filled in. I need to go back and fill them in pretty quickly, or I'm going to forget them, and they're already stitched around, so they're going to be hard to find, or hard to remember that they're there, not stitched. So another thing to think about when you're working this way. But there's very little decision making. You look at the row, you go, okay, the G has, I'm looking at the next row. The G has 4 stitches. There's already a thread parked. The A has 5 stitches. We have to start a new thread. Okay, so that's where we are. When you're dealing with confetti, it takes the stress, I guess is the word I want, but it takes that stress away, because you're gonna go just like we did here in these couple rows. Okay, there's only 1 stitch. This end stitch on this row. Well, there's only 1. Okay, I can stitch that stitch and end my thread, because I don't like to keep things over in the next diagonal. Or I can not stitch it. Now, it just so happened I had this thread for some other things over here. But let's just assume that this thread is not here. I could not stitch it, start that thread when I get to the next diagonal, and stitch all of those stitches. Another something to think about. So it's a matter of what makes sense to you. Oh, sorry. What makes sense to you at the time that you are stitching. There is not a right way, and there is not a wrong way. It is whatever makes sense to you at the time that you're working on that section. So now it is okay, we've been on here for 45 minutes. It is now just about 25 after 2. So I think what Karen's going to do is say, I might be getting ready to go to sleep. So with that, my lovely, lovely friends, I think I will call this an end to the Stitching After Dark. And if you guys kind of like this, I think I might do them more often, because there's many nights that I am awake at the wee hours of the morning, and could easily do some recorded stitching. And if you like, I'll work on this same project, and I'll talk about the parking and why I'm deciding what I'm doing and what have you, because I'm kind of thinking, okay, I know you guys are going to say, yep, that's going to last 2 weeks, and then she's going to change her mind. But I'm kind of thinking parking is going to be the way to go on this piece, for the primary reason that I'm using 28 count. And I really do like the 28 count, because look how intense those colors are looking. Let me see if I can lift it up. There you can see the better. Look at that. Are they not pretty cool? Now, like I said, this is not going to look 100% like Heaven and Earths. It's not going to look 100% like Golden Kites, because this is one that I charted myself. And then I think, Karen, why are you buying charts when you can chart them yourself? Yeah, who knows? Okay, my friends, I think it's time for me to go to sleep. I hope you enjoyed my Stitching After Dark. And if you guys enjoyed this and would like to see more of it, I think that can be arranged. So have a good rest of your night, and I will catch you in the next video. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.